Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar. My name is Konstantin Krivopustov. I'm the head of engineering of Jmix. In today's webinar, I will introduce the new Jmix version 2.3. We will explore the new Superset add-on, improvements in search and Authorization Server add-ons, the UI fragments feature and other UI improvements, as well as usage of data repositories in UI views. On the Studio side, we'll take a look at the new Liquibase changelog aggregation feature. Then my colleague will present a new tool in the Jmix ecosystem, AI Assistant. This should be interesting, so stay tuned. And finally, as usual, we'll discuss our future release plans. Feel free to ask any questions in the YouTube chat. We'll try to answer them as usual. So, first about the Superset add-on. Apache Superset is an open source tool for exploring and visualizing data. It lets you create custom dashboards with all sorts of charts. Charts get their data from databases using SQL queries, and you can deeply customize them at runtime. The Jmix Superset add-on makes it easy to connect your application to the Apache Superset server and add dashboards right to your Jmix views. Let's take a look at an example dashboard and how it is embedded into an application. So I have the Superset server running on my machine, and this is its UI. And I've created this dashboard that consists of 3 charts. Here, the dashboard is configured for embedding with this ID. And in my project, I've added the Superset add-on here, and in the application properties, I set up the URL and credentials to connect to the Superset server. In my main view, I've added main view. I've added this Superset dashboard component to the initial layout. And the only mandatory property here is the dashboard ID that I took from here, from the Superset UI. And as a result, my application now shows the dashboard on the main view. So the Jmix Superset add-on does all the heavy lifting of setting up an authentication procedure with so-called guest tokens. All you have to do is to add the dashboard component to a view and set its properties. Now about some inner workings of dashboards. The charts that you see here retrieve data directly from my application database using a so-called data set, which is configured in Superset. Here it is. And usually the data set is based on a SQL query like this one. But real-world applications often need to filter data shown to users according to the user permissions. And you can do this for embedded dashboards too. Notice the tenant field here returned by the query. In my application, I need to filter the data set according to the current user's tenant. So I defined a special handler, dataset constraints provider for the dashboard component. And I return a list of constraints in the form of dataset constraint objects from this handler. Here you can see that I add the condition by the tenant field, which is equal to the current user tenant. This magic number 25 is actually dataset ID. You can find it in the Superset UI. When it shows the dataset, you can find this ID in its URL. And of course, using the same approach, you can create dataset constraints based on role level roles of the current user. Now about the search add-on. It can now work with OpenSearch server, the same as with Elasticsearch. If you already have the search add-on in your project, it will continue working with Elastic. If you add the add-on for the first time, it will be configured for OpenSearch. To use Elastic, you will need to change the starter in your build Gradle manually. You can find instructions in the docs. All the features of the add-on, such as index definitions, indexing queue, search field in the UI, and so on, work exactly the same with both OpenSearch and Elasticsearch. And the next major feature is UI fragments. A fragment is a usable UI building block that helps in implementing complex UI views. By the way, it's one of the most requested features since we launched Flow UI in Jmix 2. Fragments are very similar to views. You can define their layout in XML, use actions and data components. You can inject fragment components into its Java controller, define annotated handler methods, and listen to lifecycle events of the fragment and its host view. At the same time, you can use fragments as components inside views and other fragments. Let's consider a couple of examples. The first example I've made in our bookstore application, sample application. Here in orders, in the order line view, you can see a couple of identical pieces of UI displaying money amount and currency, this price and discount panels. So I extracted this code into a fragment and reused it. Let's take a look at the fragment code. Here is my money fragment. As you can see, the fragment declares the data container for the money embedded entity and the form layout with a couple of fields bound to the entity attributes. Please note that this content element is not a UI component. The root UI component of this fragment is actually form layout, which is nested in content. And this is different from views, where the layout element represents the real vertical box. The Java class of the fragment has an annotation pointing to the XML descriptor. And the class is parameterized by its content, by the type of its content, which is, in this case, its form layout. I injected the data container for the money instance here and created a setter method to pass a money instance and set it to the container. In the host view, which is order line detail view, I've added the fragment 2 times with using the fragment element. And the fragment is identified by its Java class. And the last piece of the puzzle, in the host view controller, I injected both fragments as components. And in the onReady handler method of the view, I set the money instance to these fragments. So in this example, the fragment doesn't load any data itself. Instead, it receives entities programmatically from the host view. And now let's consider another example. In our UI samples application, there is an example of a fragment to manage address data. So these 4 fields, zip, country, city, and address line, actually are encapsulated in a fragment. And yeah, let's look at this, the code of this fragment. Again, it contains, it has a few data containers, instance container for the address entity, and 2 collection containers with loaders for drop-down lists of countries and cities. The fragment contains its own data loaders, so we had to trigger them at some moment. We couldn't just place a data load coordinator here because fragments currently don't support facets. So we, in the fragment controller, we listen to the host controller, host view before show event, and load the list of countries here in this handler. The list of cities depends on the selected country. So we created item change event handler for the country data container and reload the list of cities for this when the country is changed. So this is all pretty usual stuff. But look at this attribute. The address data container has this interesting provided attribute, which is set to true. This attribute means that this data container should actually be obtained from a host view. So the host view is expected to have a container with the same ID and type. And in the host view, you can see this address DC data container, which is used by the fragment. So the provided attribute for data containers allows you to map them to host data containers declaratively without writing Java code. This is often very convenient, but it also leads to coupling between fragments and hosts. So if you want to avoid this drawback, use a Java API to pass data to the fragments, as I demonstrated in the first example. In fact, the fragment element, which is used to include a fragment in a view, supports nested property elements mapped to the setters of the fragment. In this case, for example, we could pass a simple type to the fragment using this this element in XML without writing Java. But in my case, it's not a simple type, it's a money class. So it's possible only if I create a special converter class, which is also possible, but not right out of the box. The fragment API is currently marked as experimental, but we don't expect any major changes. We just want to get some real-world experience before declaring it stable. Okay, let's move on to the next feature. This release completes the support for Spring Data repositories. It makes them first-class citizens in the Jmix ecosystem. Now you can easily use them in your views to load and save data, while still being able to take advantage of all the standard Jmix UI features, such as filtering, pagination, and sorting. The new Jmix Data Repository utils class can extract data loading parameters from the Jmix load context and create the objects that can be used by Jmix data repositories. So now let's take a look at how to use a repository in a view. Here in my customer list view, you can see this loader. It has no query. Instead, I created a load delegate for the loader, which is usually accepts the load context object. And in this handler, in this delegate, first I extract the Spring Data page request object from the load context. And this object contains load conditions provided by the data grid and simple pagination. And after that, I set initial conditions. This code is equivalent of adding order by close to the JPQL query. Then I extracted other parameters, filter conditions, fetch plan, and hints from the load context into the Jmix data repository context object. And this object can be passed to any method of any repository. Here I use the standard find_all method, but you can pass it also to any derived method as well. And as a result, the repository method returns a page of customers, taking into account all view components that influence data loading. Data container provides a fetch plan, simple pagination component provides paging, generic filter provides filtering conditions, and data grid provides sorting and additional filters. Let's take a look at the view. So I'll close this one. And my customers view functions as usual. For example, I can use standard filtering abilities while still loading data through my data repository. And the final part of this feature is the ability to generate views that use data repositories. Now, when you create a view for an entity, on the here on the first page of the wizard, you can select this checkbox, use data repository, and then select an existing repository for this entity. And Studio will generate the views with delegates to the repository methods instead of the JPQL query and implicit calls to data manager. Back to slides. The next feature is about tab sheet component. In this release, we added the option to make a tab lazy. The content for that tab will not load automatically when the view opens. If you use this feature for tabs with lots of components and if they need to load extra data, your views will open faster and overall performance of the application will be better. Normally, all you need to do is to add the lazy equals true attribute to a tab. But keep in mind that you cannot inject a component located on a lazy tab. These components do not exist at the moment of the view initialization. So if you need to access such a component, you should get it in the selected change event handler of the tab sheet using the UI component utils class, as shown in this code example. The new TwinColumn component gives you one more convenient way to select items from a list. You can find a few examples of it here in our UI samples application. For example, you can play with some properties. So that's simple. Now about the Jmix Authorization Server. Previously, the Authorization Server module was bundled with the generic REST add-on. Now it has its own documentation and should be installed from the marketplace separately. The reason for this is that it's not always needed for REST. You can protect the REST endpoints using the, for example, the OIDC add-on or by other means. Also, we have received many requests and implemented the resource owner password credentials grant in this add-on. It allows you to authenticate REST clients as Jmix application users without the complicated ceremony of the authorization code grant. However, keep in mind that this grant type is not recommended by the OAuth specification because it's considered not secure enough. So use it carefully, only with trusted clients. Now let's talk about improvements in Studio. The most prominent one is the ability to aggregate Liquibase changelogs. It will allow you to reduce the number of changelogs and let the application start faster. So let me show how it works. I will add a few attributes to my customer entity and generate changelogs after each addition. It will resemble the iterative development process. Let's say that the first attribute is alpha. So I create an attribute and generate changelog. So it adds the alpha column. Okay. After that, I create beta attribute, generate the changelog again. It adds a beta column. And finally, I will add the third attribute, gamma. And at the same time, I will remove the alpha attribute. And generate the changelog. Okay, so it adds a gamma column and drops the alpha column. So I end up with 3 changelogs. And the first one is completely useless because it adds a column that is removed later. But this changelog is still registered in the database and is checked by Liquibase at each application start. Let's start to improve the situation. I will start this aggregate Liquibase changelogs action from the context menu of data store. And here on the first page of the wizard, it shows the list of all changelogs in the reverse order. As everywhere in the IDE, green indicates new files, blue modified ones, and black is for files that are committed to version control. I will select all my 3 changelogs here, 3 uncommitted files, and click Next. Studio asks me about a temporary database, which needs to be created to accomplish the task. Make sure this connection doesn't point to any important existing database. It will be dropped and recreated without further warnings. I will continue the process. And Studio generates a single changelog with two change sets, adding the beta and gamma column. On the final step, Studio asks about the compatibility of the new changelog with the existing database. Usually, if you aggregate only uncommitted changelogs, you can ignore compatibility and just recreate your local database. But if you aggregate some changelogs from the past that were already executed in some important databases, you should press the Keep Compatibility button. Then Studio will add this preconditions statement, which prevents execution of the new change set if the first deleted changelog was executed. As a result, we now have a single clean changelog with only meaningful updates, adding two columns. Keep in mind that changelog aggregation doesn't actually analyze and replicate the content of existing changelogs. It just generates a new changelog for the difference between the schema before the first removed changelog and the current model. So if the removed changelogs contained any data updates or changes to the schema that were not included in the model, for example, creating of stored procedures, they will be lost. So use this functionality with care. And about some other Studio improvements. I'd just like to attract your attention to these things. They include the generation of a UI exception handler, usable actions in UI Designer, and improved Docker file generation. Now you can generate a UI exception handler here from the toolbar of the Jmix tool window. So you can select an exception to catch and handle, and click OK, and Studio will generate a class for this exception handler. About UI actions, we'll open a simple view, just show you where to find them. So you can select some components and wrap them into a layout, for example, in a tab sheet, which is quite useful action. Or you can quickly convert one component to a similar one, for example, text field to a text area. And all matching attributes are preserved on conversion. And finally about deployment. The Docker file generation became much more sophisticated in this release. Here you can select an image, a base image compatible with the project. You can optionally include the build step, and the generated Docker file will define layers optimized for a Spring Boot application in a standard way. Okay. So now I'd like to invite my colleague, Viktor Fadzeev, to continue the presentation. He is the product manager of Jmix, and he will introduce this new AI tool.
Yeah, hello. Okay, do you see my presentation? That's great. That's great. First of all, thank you everyone for coming. I'll take a little time explaining what we have already built with the AI Assistant. Yeah, actually, we've announced the AI Assistant feature In the February release, we met then, and I've demonstrated the following slide, which showed you the preliminary vision of how Jmix AI assistant will look like. And the actual activity of creating the Jmix AI assistant is fully is going to reach the target to increase the community growth in 2024 and further years. What actual issues do we try to address with this Jmix AI assistant? They are shown, you can see them on this slide. So first of all, we are trying to help newcomers, so those people who are new to Jmix, onboard faster, perform faster onboarding. That means that we know it's quite hard to ask the right question using the full text search and get the right answer. Because this text search field in documentation, it doesn't anyhow takes in charge of your context. So it doesn't know anything about the problem you are trying to solve. That's why we've decided to do something, some tool, which will allow you to put your context in this search request and get the feedback from the documentation and other technical resources, which is very close to the thing you've tried to search, you've tried to find. Then we also address regular developers, those who are already well, let's say, experienced in Jmix, but we know that they sometimes also meet difficulties searching in our documentation. First of all, we are trying to reach the task, to highlight the path to solve complex tasks. So when you just type the question you are going to resolve, but then nothing you are going to resolve, but then you get some thoughts coming from the AI assistant, which show you, which demonstrate you which actions should be followed in the scope of Jmix concepts. So what UI components you should implement, what Jmix methods and functions you should utilize, and so on. And for some reasons, regular developers can forget about some specific implementation details of Jmix AI, of Jmix framework. And in this case, we can help you with finding the right implementation without the need to search for these details in documentation. Just also write in the direct request what you are going to find. And the last category which we address are the technical leads. The technical leads are the guys who are evaluating the technology, evaluating the applicability of Jmix technology for their specific business tasks. So they want to ask whether it fits with their existing use case, what limitation does the technology have, and whatever. Some other questions they can answer about the applicability of Jmix. And for these exact cases, we've implemented the technology, the modern technology called RAG, which stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. This slide demonstrates in common how does this actually work. So first of all, we've built a vector database, which was filled with different technical resources associated with Jmix. It is filled with such resources as Jmix documentation, with UI samples, with forum topics, which you sometimes post and we answer there. It is also filled with training materials, so those materials which we use for educational purposes. And in this database, they are stored in a special schema called vector, or let's say a set of numbers, which demonstrate the context of which represent the context, the meaning of the content which is placed there. And when the user, so that means maybe you are a user, you make the input and ask some question, for example, what is Jmix? We implement a special agent, AI agent, that first of all performs encoding of the input prompt and transforms it to the scalar also vector. And this scalar vector is searched in the vector database to find the most relevant materials which can help the LLM agent, which works afterwards, to build the right answer. So in some, let's say, from some perspective, this looks like a sequence of thinking, because in this tool, we demonstrate a series of different AI agents which perform encoding of the prompt you print, you input in this Jmix AI assistant. Then another AI agent who searches for the most relevant data sources, another AI agent who makes the final decision about what type of the resource is the most relevant to the question you've asked, and finally represents or writes the answer. You can find the link in the bottom of my slide on the Vaadin website, where you can find some relevant information about this technology, how does it actually work. So all these technical difficulties are packed in the special resource, which is located on this URL. You can see it on the website. It's aiassistant.jmix.io. But actually, you can access this AI assistant now in a more easy way, in a more simple way. You can just switch to the documentation. This is the documentation actually I'm demonstrating it on the screen right now. And here you can see a special icon located to the right of the let's say common search field, which you've probably already used. You can see here an AI icon, and when you press it, it forwards you directly to the Jmix AI Assistant application. So here you can see that we find ourselves in the Jmix AI Assistant application. This is the chat messaging application built with Jmix actually. And we are going to present the sources of this project also. I think that we will do it August latest to make it available to evaluate, to explore how you can implement AI tools into Jmix applications. And here you can see this the input field with the button send. So you can write your request, what you're going to find right here, push send, and receive the answer. So here you can see here on the screen, you can see the history of requests you have been already performed. So here you can see that Viktor Fadeev asked the following question. So how can I specify a list of items for the combo box UI component in UI? And some details around it. So I should point out that the quality of answer depends on the amount of details you have put into the prompt. And then you can see the answer of the Jmix AI Assistant, which explains you how to handle this issue, what steps should be performed. And occasionally it also writes partially the code which represents the entities which can be used in the scope of your task. It demonstrates the code of the view controller, which can be useful for your exact for your exact request. The descriptor section, which also representing the task, and it makes some explanation. So what did he use to prepare an answer for you, and what does it mean? You can also investigate some special information about his thoughts, where did he find answers or sections of answers to prepare the final answer for you. But let's say it's not mandatory, so it's some kind of an additional functionality which we use to evaluate the quality of answers. And nowadays, since now you can access this Jmix AI Assistant tool, post your prompts, post your questions, receive answers, and the only thing which we ask you to do is to score the answers you receive from the AI assistant. It's very important for us to acquire the database with the quality reference of the answers provided by this AI assistant, because this will help us to enhance this tool in future and make it more valuable. We are going to leave it free in the count of 100 questions further, and make it, let's say, wider, or let's say we are going to give more more questions available in the paid subscription tiers like Jmix Rad and Jmix Enterprise. But we will announce this a little bit later, after the beta phase of testing of this AI assistant will finish. So what do we plan? So we plan in the third quarter to receive qualified feedback and analyze it. That's why we definitely admire your inputs, which you can make in asking the questions of this Jmix AI assistant and scoring the answers it gives to you. I call him here. What a mess. Okay, then we are going to improve the tool and launch it in production in the fourth quarter of 2024 and make it available in a stable version, because you should understand sometimes it can fail. We've tested it internally. I want to say special thanks to those of you who have participated in the early access program and have already tested this tool, and we have enough confidence right now to make the community to introduce it to community wider. So it's quite good to start helping people entering the technology and make their life easier in terms of searching the needed information. So you may also ask the question why Jmix AI Assistant is better than ChatGPT, because maybe you've mentioned in my previous slides that I've used the icon of ChatGPT because it is powered by ChatGPT actually. The first theme, the first benefit is that this Jmix AI Assistant is definitely focused. Yeah, it is narrow focused on Jmix tech resources. So definitely Jmix AI Assistant, this is the augmented ChatGPT, which doesn't try to find answers from its pre-trained model. Yeah, we use ChatGPT and its LLM for building a thinking process and for extracting the most relevant information out of all resources which we've provided for this AI assistant represented in the vector database. And the second big benefit is that we implement a problem-solving approach. That means that it's not only the one ChatGPT instance, it's the series of agents which first of all try to deconstruct your prompt to the series of questions and then follow them to search for relevant information in different sources, and then finally build the right compelling answer, which will help to receive the most valuable information dedicated to your primary request. So this is quite a complicated tool built on top of ChatGPT, and is focused on bringing more value, and more specific value related to Jmix 2.x platform technical resources. So you are welcome to enter this tool, and we'll be very thankful for your scoring, for your feedbacks about this instrument, because we see a big future and we have a lot of plans for improvements in this area. So that's all about this tool for today. Hope you will find it helpful. Thank you very much, and I deliver the word to Konstantin. Please take a word. I'm stopping sharing my screen.
Okay, let's continue. As usual, in the end of our presentation, we'll discuss our future plans. For the next release in October, we are going to implement add-ons integrating calendar, pivot table, and Kanban boards into Jmix UI. The tabbed main window mode will allow users to open multiple application views in tabs inside the main window instead of new browser tabs. It's actually the most commented feature request in our GitHub issues. So we decided to start working on it. The UI component constraints feature will allow application developers and administrators to restrict access to any part of the UI, such as fields, buttons, directions, not necessarily bound to the data model, and without having to write any code. We are also going to present a new business process management solution working with an external BPM engine. And the first results of our work on integrating with external data sources. Later, in the beginning of next year, we are going to implement an email templates add-on and continue to improve the features that were started this year. So that's all for today. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you found the session useful. Let's go through the comments. Maybe we missed anything.
You can detect a question from the first question from Mladen Buchan about the comparison of new fragments and composite components.
Yeah, to composite components with fragments will fragments replace them?
Yeah,
actually, composite components are just much more lightweight thing. It's just a component, and it will be used in many cases probably. But fragments give much more capabilities, especially for enterprise applications, for our specifics. When you can use the UI designer, you can use XML layout. So in general, probably fragments can be much more for larger fragments, for larger pieces of UI and bound to data. So they're much more convenient to work with data than programmatic binding in composite components. But both can be used in applications. Property Dr. Dust. Property provided equals true provides auto-load data to fragment, doesn't it? Yes and no. Actually, if you define a data container with provided equals true attribute, it means that this container itself is taken from the host view. So it doesn't load anything itself. Its data are already loaded by the host view. You just use those instances from the host view inside the fragment. So you just you don't need to load anything in this case. The volume is low. Perhaps it's about AI assistant. Questions.
No. It's no. It's about the demonstration process, because and after that Amir tuned up the volume. That's fixed.
Good.
Then I've tried to engage the audience about the aggregate Liquibase changelog feature. You can see that Alex Burov is in love also with this feature.
Yeah, it's his everyday job to aggregate changelogs.
Yeah, definitely. His life is becoming easier since that moment. And I see
Thanks,
that
Mladen, for your
Mladen,
opinion. It's it's encouraging. Are there plans for the future to somehow make a Jmix AI add-on? What can you say about this, Victor?
I can say the only thing that we are planning to perform some demos and webinars on implementing AI in Jmix applications, because we haven't found we haven't recognized the most valuable case. There are a lot of implementations right now, and this RAG implementation, I mean retrieval augmented generation, looks the most promising, but still we haven't found the use case and we haven't described it yet. That's why we are going to present some webinar series dedicated to building some applications with the Spring AI on board, and try to detect, and then we'll try to detect the use case, which we will present as an additional functionality of Jmix in future. And due to the fact that still we don't have an estimation what is the most valuable use case right now, I think it's quite early to say that we'll demonstrate, we will perform some or deliver some Jmix AI add-on. At first, we need to understand where is the most value, which will be definitely accepted by the business users. Yeah, but we are on this way. And maybe next year we will pack it somehow in the add-on, which will help you to build such kind of an applications faster. So first, this year we are going to start researches, and especially we see a huge potential of implementing AI in the BPM area, where these special AI stencils interacting with the which are interacting with the LLM models look very useful, and they look, let's say, tangible for the business users. This is also the area which we will try to explore, and then introduce some vision around Jmix AI add-on. So these are the next steps, and I shouldn't say that we're going to present a Jmix in AI add-on in the nearest future, but we're going to detect the use case, the most valuable use case, or a series of use cases which can be covered by this additional functionality. But thank you very much for an idea, because I didn't really think about representing it like an add-on. First, I'm thinking about making some tutorials and guides how to implement AI in Jmix, and this especially today's presentation of the Jmix AI assistant will be the first let's say concept of how it can be implemented, because you can see there is a messaging UI component which allows you to chat with the AI agent built with Jmix. Yeah, so it will be available for you to take to get a feeling about how it can be implemented. Yeah, I see that generally we've asked the questions. I don't see additional. So I guess that we can close our today's section.
Yeah.
Because we've covered almost all questions, and I see that some of our features demonstrated today look very promising, encouraging, looking at the words of our community. That's great. So I want to say that thank you, everybody, for coming. Hope that you will find Jmix AI Assistant useful. This is definitely very important for us because we've, yeah, unfortunately, we've invested a certain amount of time and money in this feature, and we will be very happy to find that we've built a useful thing, yeah, which will help everybody to go into Jmix world faster and in a more easy way. Yeah, no, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Konstantin, for demonstrating new features. Thank you, Amir, for operating our today's webinar. I think I think it's time to say bye-bye and see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.